The most important vote I've ever cast. President Trump claims the election was stolen. The assertions range from specific local allegations to constitutional arguments to sweeping conspiracy theories.
Actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on.
Participating in debate and must wear a mask at all times, even when under recognition for debate. Members must also practice proper social distancing when present in the chamber. Let the record show that there is a gross violation of this guidance from the attendants on the Republican side of the aisle. Please, in the interest of your own health and as an example to the American people, abide by the numbers. Now up to 20.
Of a state that ability. Nowhere does it give the governor that ability. Nowhere does it give a court that ability. It exclusively gives that ability to the legislatures. And in fact, in most states, that's the problem. Now, there might be reasons why some people don't like the process laid out by a legislative body. Madam Speaker, I served on one of those legislative bodies when I was in the state legislature for 12 years. I served on the House and Governmental Affairs Committee. We have to fix this. In fact, on our first full day of this Congress, many of us brought legislation onto the House floor to start fixing our guide. And it's time we start following the Constitution. It's time we get back to what our founding fathers said is the process for selecting electors. That's the legislatures. In public view, not behind closed doors, not smoke-filled rooms, not bullying somebody that might give you a better ruling. Let's get back to rule of law and follow the Constitution, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
Speaker, Americans instinctively know there was something wrong with this election. During the campaign, Vice President Biden would do an event, he'd get 50 people at the event. President Trump, at just one rally, gets 50,000 people and toss up races. But somehow, the guy who never left his house wins the election. 80 million about this election, and 60 million people, 60 million Americans think it was stolen. Pennsylvania law says mail-in ballots have to be in by 8 p.m. election day. Democrat Supreme Court said, nope, we're going to extend it. Election day goes in on Tuesday now. They took it to Friday. Extended the election 3 days. Not the legislature, partisan Supreme Court. Pennsylvania law.
Election integrity is the heart of our American constitutional republic. In a representative form of government, we must be able to trust that our elections accurately represent the will of the American voter. This is the appropriate form anticipated. The federal district court decided that since other states have a deadline later than Arizona's, and some even allow for registration when voting, that Arizona's new deadline would be a time he chose, not the legislator's timeline.
To Section 1, Clause 2, states in part, and I quote, each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. As a result of this frivolous partisan lawsuit, 10 extra days were added via judicial fiat to allow voter registration. I have constituents outside this building right now. I promise my voters to be their voice in this branch of government in which I now serve. It is my separate but equal obligation to weigh in on this election and object. Are we not a government of, by, and for the people? They know that this election is not right, and as their representative, I am sent here to represent them. I will not allow the people to be...
Spoke clearly and resoundingly. They voted in record numbers. And over 81 million Americans selected Joe Biden as the next president. Now, today we hear from some in this chamber, not all, but some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, vague claims of fraud. No substance, no evidence, no facts, no explanation for why over 88 judges across this land have rejected the very same claims. Madam Speaker, the bottom line is this. As my colleague Representative Raskin so eloquently put it, the people have spoken.
Because judges and not the state legislature changed the rules of the election, Arizona clearly violated the plain language of Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution in its selection of presidential electors.
Simple. Do not count these electors until and unless the Secretary of State allows a forensic audit of the election, a request she has denied repeatedly. We have been told over and over that even though this was public, no access to the Dominion voting machines with a documented history of enabling fraud through its now discredited adjudication system, a system that literally allows one person to change tens of thousands of votes in a mere minutes. Switched from President Trump to Vice President Biden, or completely erased from President Trump's totals. The proof is in the counting curves, the curves that cannot occur except with odds so rare.
The most important vote I've ever cast.
First appeared in this country when the president was saying the disease would be handled.
We have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine.
But the new numbers tonight aren't fine. The number of Americans killed by the coronavirus is now nearly 400,000.
If this election were overturned by mere allegations from the losing side, our democracy would enter a death spiral.
The court not only defied the Constitution and the will of the people, but by so doing, they created a separate class of voters, thereby violating the Equal Protections Clause prescribed in the Constitution. How can we have two legally separate classes of voters?
Yet protests must be condemned. Nevertheless, the fact remains a large number of Pennsylvanians are enormously frustrated with actions taken by elected and appointed officials.
Contrary to law, the Supreme Court extended the deadline for mail-in ballots for 3 days beyond the election day. Contrary to law,
Ballot curing, ignoring signature validation requirements, using unsecure drop boxes, accepting ballots beyond the deadlines, and interfering with certified poll watcher access, among others. These
Authentication on a ballot. Does anyone here believe the Pennsylvania legislature would have agreed to create a separate system for mail-in ballots and in-person ballots? That if you mail it in, you don't need a signature?
In multiple states. The same fake news who took the word of Christine Blasey Ford against Justice Kavanaugh, who her own friends denied happened, also dismissed the sworn under penalty of perjury accounts from people who witnessed the election fraud. The same fact checkers who told you that Dominion machines weren't connected to the internet and couldn't be hacked are the same people telling you that there's been no voter fraud and no violations of election law. But
across the Commonwealth. And today, my objection is not about voter fraud. It is grounded in unconstitutional measures taken by bureaucrats and partisan justices in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that have unlawfully changed how this election was carried.
And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court violated the state legislature's clear constitutional authority to set elections.
After the attacks on 9/11, Americans were persuaded to give up some of their constitutional liberties. Using the justification of that global crisis, the terrorist attacks on that fateful day, America saw the erosion of their liberties for the safety and security which many felt they may receive through the USA Patriot Act and other resulting processes too many felt would keep us safe from another attack here on our shore. This year, using the justification of the global pandemic, COVID-19, we're once again saw our nation's Constitution violated.
free and fair election process, and by extension, the people's trust and legitimacy, is what has separated us as a nation. A process that we've shared with the world its moral force. A process that now, sadly, has been bastardized by those more interested in the maintenance of power than they are in the free and open.
Already underway, the state Supreme Court ruled that election officials did not have to authenticate signatures for mail-in ballots. To sum it up, Pennsylvania officials illegally did 3 critical things. 1, they radically expanded vote by mail for virtually any reason. 2, they removed restrictions when a ballot could be sent in. And 3, they removed signature verification on those very ballots.
Representative here, I did not envision my first speech on the House floor to be this here tonight, but rather a tribute. I am furthermore resolved in the fact that we, as representatives of the people, must take a stand for every American's right to a free and fair election as guaranteed by the Constitution. Article 1. These changes, along with other election irregularities throughout the 2020 election, require me, as a member of this body, to object to the certification of
and regularly given, or we don't. States certainly have broad delegated powers to administer federal elections, but they still must operate within the bounds of the Constitution. Despite receiving numerous petitions, and to the detriment of the country, I might add, the Supreme Court failed to answer the most important question of the 2020 election. Can entities outside of the state legislatures make election law?
Madam Speaker, America is an anointed nation, born of imperfect men.
Different view, a different opinion, and I think for God's sake, as people watch this or see it,
and attempt to overturn an election. And when this process is complete and all objections have been heard, I acknowledge that we will have a peaceful transfer of power on January 20th. Faith in our system must be restored and Americans must be confident.
Freedom and for liberty, but not radicals for violence. I am bitterly disappointed by the protests that happened yesterday. The actions of a violent few were cowardly and pathetic, and I am not afraid to call